Hi, the Broncos are 0-1 after losing to the Panthers 26-0, and yeah, look, I hate to admit it, but this is my circus, and oh god, those are my Broncos. I've seen these guys before. What happened to all the ticket they had last year? Must have been that tough off-season they had. Tough game, not the start anyone wanted to start the season, but hey, eventually there was going to be a point where after the dizzying heights of 2025, the good times ended with this team. There was always going to be a come down and a crash out, but did it have to be immediately coming out and laying a goose egg, ending a 7-game NRL win streak? Oh well, first time going scoreless against Penrith in the club's history and since 2021, and this was a humbling. It's not easy going back to back, says the team that won 4 straight premierships. 18 errors and 40 missed tackles for the Broncos. They lose out on every single stat except for kick meters, and they have me asking questions like, do they know how to catch? Yeah, it was humid and sticky and gross, but it was humid and sticky and gross for both teams. Penrith made 14 errors themselves, and there's still rust on both of them, but why does my team look like OG Tin Man when they look like the Ethan Slater murderbot? On another view, if you'll join me in the cope zone, are you ready? The Broncos were responsible for all of the Panthers' points in this game, so we know they've got at least 26 points in them, and if they hold on to like 3 more passes, they would have scored, but since they didn't, they also didn't reveal too much strategy to a key rival that they expect to meet in the postseason. If you take that thought to its logical conclusion, the Broncos actually won this game. Alright, exiting the cope zone. Boys, how dare you score 0 points to the season opener? You do realize that I've waited 5 months for this game. You realize my weekend has now been ruined. I spent all day Friday repeatedly typing "Let's go Broncos" into a blank email, and now I have to catch up the whole day's work and feel bad. The players are responsible for that last bit too. That's got nothing to do with me. Anyway, let's get into the game itself, as much as I don't want to, but I do want to show this point about the Broncos being responsible for all of Penrith's points. Penrith's first try comes after an uncalled obstruction, which leads to a Cleary bomb, which is annoyingly inch perfect, and Walsh drops cold and the ball falls into the hands of Casey McLean, who's over before you can say, are we sure Walsh has the correct technique for this? And I'll be the first to admit that I don't know how to do any of this stuff, but this whole arms apart, hips forward, leaning backwards thing, I don't have any stats for this, but I just feel like it works like 3 times out of 10. And maybe it's more that these shallow kicks are so much harder to take because they're contested and everyone's good in the air nowadays, but I also don't know if the Broncos are doing themselves any favors with their technique because Mariner's not catching them either. And whenever an opponent kicks closer to the line, I'm just hoping the chaser knocks it on more than I'm hoping that the defender catches it. Who do they play next week? Anyone that can kick on that team? Anyway, Dylan Edwards scores their second try, 1 tackle after Mariner has dropped another bomb and after putting Jack Gosiewski on skates. And this was a real bad Gosiewski game. He played 58 minutes, ran the ball 8 times for 57 meters, made 27 tackles and missed 2, but early into the game, he basically jumped into a tackle when he ran the ball and got crunched by Lindsay Smith. Then a couple minutes later, he's ducking into a tackle and copping a head knock, which didn't result in a HIA, but that would have explained his defense on this Edwards try. He's just completely out over his skis. Hunt attempts the Gosiewski play early and it almost came off, but like a lot of things the Broncos did in this game, it just didn't work. Penrith got another 2 points for a penalty after Benny Fragrance got a tackle wrong and committed a head high, but then they were starting to build a bit of momentum in the last 10 minutes. They had a couple of sets at Penrith line and it almost turns into points when Walsh put Ricky into a gap and Ricky just plain spills it. I like everything about that play, but the error, and they'll go back to it plenty of times throughout the season and hopefully they get some points through it. And at this point it's 12-0 and you figure if they can make it into the sheds playing some pretty horrific attacking footy and only be down 2 tries at halftime, that it would be a small victory. But then Katoni makes another of those uncharacteristic errors that he made in the World Club Challenge, tries to make up for it by rushing out on Blaze Talangi, which isn't a completely objectionable play considering Cleary's in the play the ball, but it would have been great if Staggs had made the tackle, but it's way too big a swing. He misses and Penrith end up scoring. And that's kind of the story of the whole game. The Broncos would make a bit of progress, make an error or a bad decision, and then try to make up for it and just commit another worse error. And there were some real bad errors in this game. It wasn't just the amount of dropped balls, but like Shibasaki throwing a ball out of bounds, or Hunt calling for an offload from Haas and then looking away and dropping it, or Mariner jumping into the line of Jenkins' kick after Penrith had run 40 meters backwards, Wilson not getting it out of the way of the kick, more than your run-of-the-mill Broncos errors. In the second half, it was much the same, and as time dwindled and the error count kept growing, the hope for another insane comeback, which was still there for most of the game, faded by the time that Walsh threw the intercept to Jenkins for his second try. While my overall feeling from this game is disappointment, there's still some positive. The first and probably best is how well Karapani and Shibasaki defended To'o, holding him to a measly 160 meters and 0 points. And this sounds counterintuitive for a game where they conceded 26 points. I think they generally defended really well. They conceded only 2 line breaks by Luke Garner and Dylan Edwards, both of whom ran directly at Jack Gosiewski within a suspicious vicinity to his head knock, but in general set for set play they held up well. Penrith had 12 more sets than the Broncos, and Penrith's best option in attack was giving it to the Broncos. In saying that, Penrith were pretty conservative in the second half, looking to sew it up rather than break it open. That's kind of it though for positives, so let's move to negatives. Jack Cogger played 31 minutes at lock and I don't think anyone ran at him. I also don't think that moving Ben Hunt to 6 did anything much, but in 2 games this season the Broncos have looked better with Hunt at 9 than they have at Pakes, and Pakes was bad in this game. He's always slow to get the ball out, but you can't have a bloke looking at Hakeem Haas running top speed, stunting and deciding to give it to Haas anyway when he's slowed down. That's just unforgivable. And I don't understand what they gain from having a healthy Ezra Mam on the field for fewer minutes in service of starting a guy that is not contributing to the attack and is in a hotly contested position. Pakes and Gashevsky were both bad enough to be dropped after this game, I think. As for who replaces them, I don't know what Moser has to do to get a run, but they played a couple of games last season with Willison on that left edge, and they were some of his best, and they're always trying to get him minutes. That might be a successful strategy. If I was a coach, there would be broader issues, like I'd force every player to wear Nike boots and also the jersey to be Nike, but I'd make those changes. It's hard to judge the attack because they did do some good things. A couple of recognizable plays. Carrigan was getting into his office work, but the completion was horrific. It was a coin flip to see whether they'd be able to complete tackles 1 and 5, but then some of the tackles 2, 3, and 4 were all right. And while we're talking negatives, worst bunker decision since the last one by Ashley Klein by not knowing the difference between forwards and backwards, which tracks. But what a fun round 1 narrative. No one knows which way a ball is traveling anymore. I still hate the new logo and I'm worried it's cursed. But overall, I guess heading into next week, it's just a case of, whoa, don't do that again. Anyway, recurring segments, and there's a new one this season thanks to my friends at Game Day Squad who are open to my suggestions about additional stat categories. I think that in this game, applying my statistical measure, Josiah Karapani recorded 65 ticker. And so if you've played a Josiah Karapani card this week, just add like an extra 22 points to his tally. It won't be in the system just yet, but do it in your mind and keep it there. And if you want heaps of cards, use my code BLOCKED. Anyway, ticker gutless index, it's a sad affair this week. Karapani, Haas, and Carrigan all showed plenty of ticker. Carrigan made 45 tackles, but only ran 85 meters and had an error, but I think the low meters had causes beyond himself. Jensen only played 20 minutes and ran 3 times for 15 meters, but didn't miss any tackles and didn't commit any errors, so he stays in the ticker zone. Mam, Tolti, and Tafa all came off the bench. I don't think Ezra did anything wrong, but he could have done more right. Tolti had some good, some bad, and I can't put to words anything that Tafa did in his limited minutes, but it means he didn't do anything bad, so I've got them all on the border. Reynolds, I think, did enough to stay on the border himself. There were enough times the team looked organised that I'm happy, and then he defended well, but his kicking game was a bit lacking. Then there's some regular ticker merchants in the gutless zone. I don't think Katoni has ever been in the gutless zone, and to those players I say, it's on you to consider how you can show more ticker in-game, but the lowest performers are Pakes and Gashevsky. Alright, that'll do it for week 1. Welcome back. I'll be here all year. Ciao. Justin Merendino, ciao.